Story 1. So this is a fun bit of malicious compliance that shows why I love my new job. After being on the receiving end of more accidents than I like, I switched careers to working as a driver's ed teacher. I'm fairly easygoing, but there is one aspect of any job I have that is a bottom line. My time is my time. If I'm off the clock for any reason, then I don't work. So if your class is scheduled for 5:45 and you show up at 5:30 when I start my break, I'm not going to do anything. Most parents understand that after the hell of kids that don't understand not stopping on train tracks, that you go counterclockwise through roundabouts. Seriously. He jumped the curb to turn the wrong direction through it. And one panic-inducing moment where a student nearly went the wrong way down a highway, rural area, so no on-off ramps, just a road that crosses it. I need my brakes to distress. If they show up early and I say I'm on break, they nod and wait. Most of the time. Very seldom we get people that feel they have a right to demand I start a class early. This is one of those. First, it should be noted I don't have a uniform or badge, so aside from the rooftopper on the training car, nothing says I work for the driving school. I had just settled down in my own car and was about to bite into my sub. 2 of my past students work at Subway and will discount my meals, when a woman knocked on my window. I opened my door and stepped out with food still in hand. The following occurs, cast self-explanatory. Karen, are you Issa? We wanted to start his class early. Me. I'm sorry I'm on lunch right now. His lesson starts in 30 minutes. Well, we need to start earlier. He needs to be home early for dinner, so he can't be out that late. I'm sorry, but when you scheduled the class, the schedule was fixed so that I could have the necessary break and lunch times. Well then reschedule this class and have your stupid lunch later. Miss, it's my lunch break. I'm not being paid for this time, and I need to be on the clock and scheduled to teach under state law. Not really, but sometimes saying it's a legal requirement slows the entitlement train. I don't care. Teach him now. Oh, wow, that's a bright light bulb over my head. Let's play with this. Okay, I can reschedule today's class. Just let me call the office and get that arranged for you. I grab my phone and dial the admin I deal with most of the time. Kat is great. She will let me know when parents or students cancel. She clears my schedule when I need to take the car in for maintenance, and she doesn't like her teachers being bossed around by customers. After all, they need us more than we need them. Just to make it easier, I put the phone on speaker. Me? Hey Kat, Joe's mom Karen is here and wants to reschedule his lesson today. Kat, when does she want to move it to? Karen, I want him to start right now. So yeah, I was thinking just cancel the 4:30 to 6:30 class and give me another at 4:10. Why is this taking so long? Kat, you're sure you want to do this, ma'am? Yes, you idiot. Please stop shouting. My phone is on speaker, and she can hear you perfectly fine. Kat. Okay, I've canceled the original class and rescheduled it to start in 2 minutes. We'll note this in your records. Please remember there is a $50 fee for canceling within 24 hours. Have a good day. And she hung up. While I tried not to grin as Karen realized she'd just been charged double the cost of a lesson to have it start 20 minutes early. And if she doesn't pay, then we can withhold the certificate her son needs to take his driver's test. For his part, the kid is actually pretty good. One of those students where we are mainly just going through the motions of driver's ed to appease the almighty BMV. And he's glad he gets to spend a couple hours every few days driving without having to listen to his mother nagging him. Story 2. So background, our father left us and to go to another family. Not another woman, but his best friend's whole family with a son and daughter. It was around 5 years ago that he decided to do that, and so we minimized our connection with him and his family. Mind you, his side of the family was fun to be with, but his sisters and brother were not. They defended him and just sided with our father completely, without asking our family or even us kids if we are okay and are we still good. They didn't contact us either, and we were goods with that. The story is kind of complex since there are so many things that happened before he left us. So let us go straight into the event. So this just happened recently. Our aunt called our mother's workplace. Workplace, I tell you. Not our landline. Not on our phones. Workplace. She called a few times but failed because her mother was yet to arrive. Until she got hold of her and managed to talk to her. She called and greeted her with the basics, "Hello?" and she went around the bush, trying to bring up the good mood to maybe persuade her. Mom then asked, "Okay, straight to the point, what do you need?" Then our aunt told her what they needed. It isn't the exact conversation, but it went like this. Entitled Aunt. Well, your ex-husband needs the kid's medical certificate because he needs those to be a green card in another country. He needs that because, in his papers, he said the kids are dependent on him. They will also want the kids to be brought there. Don't keep this to you, as this is the kids' future. Mom was so shocked and angry because they didn't even ask if the kids, or us, were okay, let alone ask for our medical certificate for his benefit. It is to also make our future better because he will be bringing us there with him. It became blurry to me as I got angry that they have the guts to ask us that without them contacting us. They went for some argument before our aunt hung up, then to call later, crying or being dramatic, that they haven't been contacting us for years and that Mom kept us from seeing or contacting us. We got our social media and we are friends with some of their sons, so that was false. I even greeted his son a happy birthday when his birthday came a few days ago. It was so shocking that they became so entitled that they have the guts to ask our mother about our info and accuse her of keeping us away from them. It is also so entitled of them that they asked her to get the kids to be with our father, that it will help our future, so don't keep it away from them. Mind you, our mother managed to raise us and have us go to school within those 5 years with her wise budget, hard work, and the help of our mother's side's relatives that were generous. God bless them. They are the best. I find it so hard that they managed to say that. I thought they were wiser than that, but what the hell? Story 3. Sorry for the format on mobile, and was talking with a coworker about this before I went on break, so I thought I would post it. You see, I used to work for a large retail company that sells electronics. We'll call them Sherry's Electronics, sure, and seriously, if you work for them, I'm sorry. And I recommend you find a new job that will actually get you somewhere in life. Anyway, if you don't know how it works at Schmid's, if you are a salesperson, more specifically in the audio-video department, you are paid one of two ways. You are either paid in commission, so as long as your sales are equal enough to make it to minimum wage pay rates, or if you cannot make enough sales to reach minimum wage rates, you are cushioned by being paid minimum wage exactly. To explain a little nicer, say minimum wage is $300 for 1 week of work. But I ended up making $600 in sales. Well, that's all fine and well, I'd get paid $600. But then say the next week I didn't make that much, and only did $250 in sales. Well, they just pay me $300 instead. Now, I know what you're thinking. Oh, that seems nice. What's the problem with that? The problem was, or at least in my case back in the day when I used to work for them, if your sales didn't get up above minimum wage for 3 weeks in a row, you were immediately terminated. This means slow months when there were no holidays or big door-buster sales were a teeth grinder. You would be checking your sales report every 5 minutes to make sure you at least had a penny over what you needed to be safe for the next few weeks. I was generally all right with my sales, but the management in this place, or at the very least, the supervisors, were big jerks. They were also paid differently. A supervisor was paid an hourly wage, well above the minimum, mind you, and they had commissions stacked with their hourly wage. So, as you can expect, there were a lot of sales snipers and stolen sales by our supervisors. A sales sniper is what my coworkers and I called it when a supervisor would target and lock on anyone who was dressed a little bit nicer and rush over to them as fast as possible to try and force them into a sale. Now that we're caught up, this is where my story starts. I had a supervisor who was in all ways the worst human being in the history of ever. Okay, there was Stalin and Hitler, but he's maybe top 10 then. Anyway, to give context on the kinda emotional and mental trauma he gave me, one day I came into work on Veterans Day, and my grandfather was in the 8th Air Force Division in World War II. In honor of him, I had on one of his 8th Air Force Division ties, since he passed away about 10 years ago prior to these events. Admittedly, it was a little small on me, but I still thought it made me look clean and respectable. Other veterans who came to our store were complimenting it and congratulating me for my grandpa's service. But then, my supervisor sees it. We'll call him D. "Yo, what's up with your tie?" "Oh, it was my grandfather's. He was an airline combat gunner in the 8th Division Air Force during World War II. I'd feel sorry for anyone who saw him wearing that thing. It looks ridiculous. If I had a kid, I wouldn't let him wear it." I felt my face grow red, and I glared at him with the most hateful glare I've given anyone. I simply said, "You are the most disgusting person I have ever met," and walked off to do something mindless to get my mind clear. In any case, this story is about a sale I made with a gentleman who was such a cool guy. We just finalized a sale for his new 75 inches 4K TV, which included the whole works: TV insurance, all the best cables, installation, wall mounts, a full sound system. In other words, commission out the world. I get all my paperwork finished and put my papers with all his stuff, so when the delivery team takes it out the following day, I get credited for the sale. This sale would have made me $500 in commission alone. It was a huge deal for me. I had the following day off, so I was ready to relax and enjoy my hard-earned pay. The day that I returned to work, I go to check my sales report, and I see that my sale was not posted there. My eyes widened and almost immediately panicked. I rush up to the sales office and ask them to search the record for any sales with a large TV, wall mount, etc., etc. They found it, and they saw it was under D's name. I was furious. I bit my fist and screamed at the top of my lungs in rage. I went into the store manager's office and screamed in rage how I wanted this fixed and I wanted my sale back. She told me how payroll was already completed for the week and all sales had been finalized, so it would be impossible for me to get the commission. I stared daggers into her, and I knew it wasn't her fault. I stomped my way back down to my department, and I handed my name badge and my walkie-talkie to D, and I stared him in the eyes and I said, "You will burn in hell for this," and turned to walk out, quitting that freaking job. A few years have passed, and I'm now an auditor for a credit company. I shuffle through some clients' papers to see who I need to review the accounts of, and I find D's name on one of the papers. My eyes widened and I grinned. Not just a normal grin, but the kind of grin the Grinch gave when he devised a disgustingly horrible plan. I looked through his file and saw that he had filed for a mortgage loan a month previously. It was a huge loan that equaled $350,000, and at the moment it was pre-approved, but pending final review since it was such a huge amount. I smiled as I looked into his file, and I remembered how often he boasted at work, how his parents had basically paid for everything up until the point where he was 27. Sad, I know. Well, after I had finished looking through his estimated earnings, I noticed he failed to mention the part where his parents would be paying for him to live. Because of this, all the things that he listed under his name for financial collateral, his car, his inflated bank account, his credit score that was shot through the roof due to his parents paying all his bills and credit cards, basically anything he could list that could make him look financially stable. After this, I marked all those items as invalid properties for the client to submit, because, lawfully, they are the property of his parents and not his. I submitted my report and a little bit later reviewed his files. His credit score went from an 800 to a 300, and his file marked him as basically penniless. His loan was resubmitted and denied, and now any loans or credits he tries to submit are now immediately flagged due to his failure to submit proper financial reports. This means that basically he will never be approved for any credit cards, mortgage loans. Hell, even if he wanted an apartment, no landlord would ever approve someone with a new financial profile he had. I single-handedly ruined his chances of ever being able to live anywhere but with someone else as a roommate or on the street. For that reason, I wake up almost every morning with a large grin and a warm cup of coffee, knowing my world is at peace and balance is restored to my universe. Story 4. I've always found peace in my morning walks with my dog. After losing my spouse in a car accident 2 years ago, these walks became our daily ritual of healing. My golden retriever has been my rock through the grieving process, and I've grown fiercely protective of him. That Saturday morning started like any other. We were at our usual spot in the park, enjoying the crisp morning air. I was sitting on the grass while my dog was lying beside me, his tail wagging contentedly. Two kids approached us. They must have been around 8 and 10 years old. The younger child politely asked if they could pet my dog. I told them they could, explaining that he was very friendly. The children were gentle with him, and he loved the attention. Their faces lit up as he rolled over for belly rubs. The older child commented on how soft his fur was and asked for his name. Before I could answer, they were joined by their sister, who looked about 12. She excitedly asked if she could pet him too, and I gave her permission. I looked around, wondering where their guardian was. When I asked them about their mom's whereabouts, they pointed to a woman sitting on a bench about 50 feet away, completely absorbed in her phone. After a few more minutes, I decided it was time to continue our walk and told them we needed to get going. The kids immediately started whining and crying. The younger child begged us not to leave, while their sister insisted they wanted to play more. Their screams attracted their mother's attention, and she stormed over to us. The mother demanded to know what I had done to her kids. I explained that I was just leaving, and that her kids had been playing with my dog. She started petting my dog, who, being the friendly soul he is, happily accepted the attention. I bent down to tie my shoelaces, keeping the leash loosely between my legs. That's when she made her move. She snatched the leash and started quickly walking away with my dog. When I shouted to ask what she was doing, she started rambling about how I would understand when I had kids, and that her children needed this dog. She insisted they deserved him. I firmly told her it was my dog and demanded she give him back. She refused, claiming her kids needed him to be happy. I reached out and grabbed the leash from her hands, my heart pounding. She threatened to call the police, claiming I had assaulted her. I should have walked away, but something in me snapped. 2 years of grief and healing with my dog made me stand my ground. I challenged her to go ahead and make my day. She pulled out her phone and called the police, spinning some tale about me stealing her dog and bullying her kids. 5 minutes later, 2 officers arrived. The mother immediately started accusing me of stealing her dog and terrorizing her children. When the officer asked if this was her dog, I confidently explained it wasn't and suggested that if it was truly her dog, she should know his name and have treats for him. She tried calling him by the name Buddy, but my dog didn't even look in her direction. I demonstrated my ownership by pulling out his treats and calling him by his actual name. He immediately ran to me, sitting perfectly and waiting for his treat. The officer then asked her to explain how exactly I had been bullying her children. Her only response was to rant about how her kids deserved the dog because they really liked dogs and needed one. The officer was clearly done with the situation. The officer informed her that attempting to steal someone's dog and filing a false police report were serious offenses. She was told she would be fined for wasting police resources and was strongly advised to leave me and my dog alone. She tried to protest, bringing up her status as a single mother, but the officer shut her down, telling her she was lucky I wasn't pressing charges. As the entitled mother was being written up, her kids stood there looking mortified. The older ones were trying to pull their mother away, clearly embarrassed by her behavior. Later, I found out from other park regulars that she'd tried similar stunts with other dog owners, but no one had called her bluff before. The police officer told me she was banned from the park for 6 months and had to pay a substantial fine. Now when we go for our walks, we sometimes see her kids with their father instead. They still wave and smile when they see us, but they keep their distance, probably on their dad's instructions. My dog and I stick to our routine, but I keep a tighter grip on the leash these days. Story 5. For a little background, my entitled aunt is my dad's cousin, and my niece is her granddaughter. Now, about my entitled aunt. She is the daughter of my grandmother's eldest sister. She grew up entitled because, according to my immediate aunt and my late grandmother, my great-aunt looked down on my grandmother's family. My late grandfather served in the army, while my great-aunt's husband worked in the Coast Guard. According to my grandmother, the Coast Guard was seen as more prestigious than the army. My great-aunt would use my dad and his siblings as free labor whenever she hosted parties when they were younger. This treatment made their cousins, especially my entitled aunt, look down on them. Now to the main story. My entitled aunt has been arrested multiple times for alleged fraud. When she was on trial, she and my niece lived in a province 6 hours away from where we live. Whenever she had court dates, she would stay with us, leave my underage niece alone, and rearrange our house without permission. She caused so many problems that my aunt and I decided we didn't want her around anymore. We finally set boundaries and asked my uncle, who lives abroad, to tell her that if she wanted to visit, she had to notify us a month in advance. We also made it clear that this wasn't her house, and she needed to stop acting like it was. Last June, my entitled aunt informed us that she planned to stay with us at the end of August. Although we weren't happy about it, at least she gave us notice, which allowed us time to prepare. But just a week later, while I was at work, she unexpectedly showed up. My aunt, despite her fiery temper, is respectful to elders. My entitled aunt is 15 years older than her, so she remained polite. When I got home, my aunt told me what happened. I had left for work at 5, and because my shift started at 6:30, I'm unemployed at the moment. By the way, by 5:30 am. My aunt found my entitled aunt sitting outside our front door. She hadn't texted or called to let us know she was coming, she just showed up. That was the last straw for my aunt. She later admitted to lecturing my entitled aunt, saying, "You have a son in this city. Why don't you stay with him?" My entitled aunt's response? "I didn't want to bother him." That infuriated my aunt, who told her the hard truth. The reason your son doesn't want you in his home is because you don't love anyone except yourself. You are not welcome here. After saying this, my aunt handed her an envelope of money and said, "Come back here once you've learned to care about others." This interaction happened in front of our tenants. According to them, my aunt didn't raise her voice or throw the money. However, that's not the story my entitled aunt shared with her neighbors back in the province. My niece later messaged me to ask what had happened. Niece: Auntie, Grandma said that my great-aunt yelled at her, insulted her, and threw money at her. I know my great-aunt would never do that. What really happened? Me? Oh, that? Remember when I told you we're tired of your grandma coming over without notice? Well, that happened, and my aunt told her to stay with your uncle and gave her some money. My niece, bless her, made sure everyone back home knew the truth. A few months ago, my niece sent me screenshots of my entitled aunt chatting with one of our tenants' husbands. The conversation was in our local language, but this was the gist of it. Entitled aunt. The storyteller acts like she owns the place. She's not even her dad's biological child. Does she even know she's adopted? Tenant's husband. They act like they're rich. That's what. Entitled aunt. She acts so high and mighty, but she's a slob. Tenant's husband. She and her aunt aren't even clean or organized. Entitled aunt. Ha ha ha, yeah, they act like they have treasures in that house. So selfish. I was livid when I read it, especially about her calling me a slob. Yes, I'm overweight, but so is she twice my size, actually. On top of that, I'm actively working on losing weight. As for her calling us unclean, that's a joke. We clean our home every day, while she does nothing but sit around. We don't let her do chores for a reason. The last time she washed dishes, she put clean plates and pans in a tub of dirty water. My aunt doesn't let her clean because she once broke glassware, and frankly, we treat her as a guest, even if she's a frustrating one. The reason we're careful with our belongings is that she's careless with other people's things. She almost broke a collectible item I've owned for 6 years. She's the only one who's ever chipped it. She's also moved people's medications without permission and left rotting eggs on our dining table. She has no respect for hygiene products either. She once used my body scrub without asking. That's gross. And my toothbrush. She took it. My niece had a similar experience with her, too. Now, on to my niece. She's 18, has a baby, and lives with her boyfriend. It was a cryptic pregnancy, so she didn't even know she was expecting until late into it. They're both working hard to provide for their child. My niece is finishing high school while working part-time, and her boyfriend takes on any job he can find. They live in a low-income area, so their money mainly goes to essentials like rice. But here's where my entitled aunt comes in. She eats most of the rice they buy and feeds the rest to her dogs. They go through a kilogram of rice daily, not because my niece eats a lot, but because of her. Even though my niece prioritizes her baby, she's under constant stress. She recently lost her part-time job after a hospital stay, and when her boyfriend asked my entitled aunt for help, she refused. Instead, her boyfriend called me to borrow money. I gave them what I could and told them not to worry about paying me back. They're family. Meanwhile, my entitled aunt accused her boyfriend of stealing loose change coins worth next to nothing and still wouldn't help with housework. My niece does all the cooking and cleaning while her boyfriend works. My poor niece is essentially being treated like a servant. My entitled aunt depends on them to pay for all the utilities, and if they can't, she threatens to kick them out. I've told my niece she's welcome to move back here while finishing school, and thankfully, they're saving up to do just that. Once they move, my entitled aunt will be left to fend for herself. Everyone here, aside from the tenant's husband, dislikes my entitled aunt. We've already banned her and her daughter, my niece's mother, from our property. Looking back, it's been exhausting dealing with someone who has no sense of responsibility or respect for others. I'm just relieved my niece and her family will soon be free of her. They deserve so much better. Story 6. Hey everyone, I'm back with an update. I wanted to share my mom's apology text, but I realized I couldn't upload pictures here. It seems that's not allowed on this subreddit. I'm not sure where else I could post it, so if you know a way, please let me know. Things have been alright, I guess. The first week after everything happened was emotionally draining, to say the least. My partner has been incredibly supportive, but even so, I ended up going to the hospital because I was worried I might hurt myself from all the stress. My mental health was already in a bad place before all this, so when things escalated, I felt like I couldn't handle it anymore. When I admitted myself, I expected help, but instead, I was told I wasn't considered a direct harm to myself. That response shocked me, especially since this was the first time I'd ever sought help for my mental health. I went to the hospital because I felt desperate, and being turned away felt like a slap in the face. I waited for over 6 hours, was mostly ignored by the staff, and only got about 4 minutes with the doctor, who didn't seem interested in what I had to say. It was disheartening, but what can you do? A few days before this, my stepdad had invited me to Thanksgiving at my mom's house. At first, I declined. Even though she had apologized, we hadn't spoken in person since our argument, and I felt it wasn't the right time. After being turned away by the hospital, I thought that was the end of it. I told my stepdad I was busy and wouldn't have my phone for a while, without explaining why. I didn't want visitors and assumed I'd stay at the hospital for at least 2 days. However, when I was sent home the same night, my mom reached out, offering to help if I needed anything. I waited 2 days to respond because I wasn't sure what to say and wanted to avoid conflict. When I finally replied, she again invited me to Thanksgiving. This time, I accepted because my sister would be there and, honestly, I missed my cat terribly. I know going from a major argument to Thanksgiving dinner was a leap, and it probably wasn't the smartest decision. I didn't go alone, though. My partner came with me and supported my choice. The dinner itself was fine, if you don't mind dry turkey and store-bought side dishes. Another reason I went was financial. My mom had botched her eyelashes using some at-home extension kits and ended up with an allergic reaction. She offered me $75 every 2 weeks to do her lashes, which I agreed to because I could really use the extra $150 a month. It's ironic because she used to make me do her lashes weekly, and now she's satisfied with every 2 weeks. I swallowed my frustration for the sake of some income. That Saturday after Thanksgiving, I went over to do her lashes, and they were a total disaster. Some lashes were broken, others completely missing, and there were chunks of glue everywhere that I had to clean up. I charged her extra for the work because it was a mess, and honestly, she should have known better than to try that at home. We talked while I worked on her lashes. The conversation wasn't as serious as it probably should have been. She claimed she never actually expected me to leave after our fight. She said she was just trying to ground me and scare me a little. I told her outright that the way she handled the situation wasn't okay. If she wanted to get her point across, sending me an eviction text and making me sit in anxiety all weekend wasn't the way to do it. She started the conversation in a condescending tone and didn't even give me a chance to explain myself. I understand that her childhood shaped her belief that fighting equals caring. But for me, it's the opposite. Her actions kicking me out and making me feel disposable didn't show love. They felt like a power trip. She even brought up the idea of making me sleep by the front door. While she claimed she would never actually do it, just mentioning it made me feel less than human. I told her as much, though the tone of the conversation stayed too lighthearted for my liking. I've gotten better at standing up for myself, though. Confrontation used to terrify me, and I'd avoid it entirely. Now, while I'm still not great at it, I'm learning to say what I need to say. At one point, my mom noticed a bruise on my arm from a blood draw and asked about it. Since she's a phlebotomist, it was pretty obvious what it was from. I decided to be honest and told her I had admitted myself to the hospital because I was feeling too stressed and worried I might hurt myself. Her immediate concern was whether it would go on my medical record. I reminded her that a record wouldn't matter if I wasn't around anymore. Before she apologized, she had gone through my room and packed up my belongings. In doing so, she found an old notebook of mine, the one I use to write when I'm in a really bad mental state. There are maybe 4 entries per year in it, and it's filled with some of my darkest thoughts. She told me she had no idea I'd been going through so much, and that I should have told her. I explained that I didn't feel safe opening up to her, and that's why I didn't share. If she had created a safer environment, I would have wanted to confide in her. But she never did, so I never took the risk. If any of you want to see her full apology text, let me know where I could post it. It adds context and, initially, felt genuine. She rarely apologizes, so I didn't expect it at all. Looking back now, though, I'm not sure how satisfied I am with it. I've asked my partner's parents if I can stay with them a bit longer, and they've graciously allowed me to remain for a few more months if necessary. As soon as my partner and I can move out, we plan to. This arrangement is temporary. They've been amazing, but it's not their responsibility to house me. Together, we're paying $600 a month to stay here, and I've been doing my part to keep the peace by helping with chores. Cleaning also helps me calm my nerves, so I'm constantly tidying up to avoid feeling like a burden. School is still ongoing, and I'm aiming to stick with it for another 4 months or so before finding a job. It's a lot to manage, but I'm determined to see it through. As for my mom, she offered to let me move back in, but I've decided against it. I'll be visiting this Saturday to help decorate the Christmas tree, mainly to see my sister again. I don't particularly enjoy decorating because my mom always criticizes the placement of ornaments and rearranges everything after we're done. It's not fun, but I'll endure it for my sister's sake. My stepdad, by the way, took over my old bed. He's been sleeping in his man cave or on the couch since last October because of his snoring, which, according to my mom, is incredibly loud. I don't blame her. It really does sound like an elephant. I don't want to move back in and force him out of my room again, especially since I finally feel safe where I am now. Living with my partner's family has been a relief. I'm treated like a person here. No one makes me feel unwanted, and I'm not afraid of being thrown out on a whim. I was nervous at first, barely leaving the bedroom for fear of being a nuisance. But on the first day, I talked to my partner's mom, and she was so understanding that I felt much better. She's been incredibly kind, and I've tried to show my appreciation by helping out wherever I can. In the first week, I deep cleaned their kitchen, partly as a thank you and partly because it helped me quiet my racing thoughts. I keep helping where I can because it's the least I can do for their kindness. Anyway, thank you all for reading this update. I probably won't post again for a while, but I hope you're all doing well. Happy holidays!